handling jobs for her, where she provides platform to women who have taken a break and they're coming back, and she's helping them getting placed. Neha, question to you. You interact with a lot of organizations. Would you like to call across some noteworthy practices on these fronts, and maybe you pick up maternity as a specific piece and highlight certain innovative practices that you've come across?
Sure, absolutely. I think it's very encouraging to see the kind of efforts companies have started to put in to retain and attract mothers. And that's extremely encouraging because I think they're realizing the capabilities that lie in this talent pool, which is very important to not let go of. So the way companies are addressing this talent pool is in lots of different facets, right? One, it comes to making women who are, say, newly married and might be thinking of starting a family, making them feel welcome in the organizations by not asking in an interview, oh, when are you planning to have a baby? Second is when that woman comes in to tell her boss that I'm pregnant, kind of sensitizing the bosses and the managers to not react negatively to such an announcement. Third is to support that woman through her entire pregnancy. I mean, especially when, say, they might have some medical problems, or when, in the 9th month, mobility does become a problem. How do we kind of make sure that we give her the flexibility required to be able to work if she chooses to continue to work till her last day of her pregnancy? And fourth is right after the child is born. I mean, even though parents are becoming more and more equal these days, there are certain things that a mother can do for a newborn and that a father can't do. And it will be really sad to lose out on those women if we can't support them during those first 6 months, 10 months of that infant's life. So in fact, a lot of companies in India have started bumping up the maternity leave policies. In fact, Schneider Electric is one of them, right? You'll have made it 6 months now of paid maternity leave. Godrej has 6 months, Flipkart has 6 months, Snapdeal has 6 months. There's a whole long list of companies which have long maternity leave policies which are fully paid. Even after that maternity leave policy is over, when they come back, companies are still supporting these women, right? They are realizing that it's difficult when you leave a newborn infant at home and have to get back to full-time work and stay away from that baby for 8-9 hours a day. So they allow that woman to work part-time, they allow that woman to work flexi-time, and in fact with full pay. And that speaks volumes to that woman, that makes her realize that I'm valued in this company, right? That they care about my contribution, and exactly what Monica said, it brings about loyalty. And loyalty is an attribute that cannot be measured, cannot be quantified, but highly important when you're trying to build a workforce that will stick with you. Then, despite all this, there are still several women who don't want to continue working after the child is born. And like many of you guessed, maternity is a big problem because of which women are dropping out of the workforce. For many women, there comes a time when they feel that they want to prioritize motherhood over their careers. And there are lots of reasons for that, right? There could be a lot of societal biases where they feel obliged to be there. And there could be a lot of personal biases where they feel that they want to give their all to this baby and they don't want to juggle between motherhood and the careers, and they take a clean break. Now, there comes a time in that woman's life again when she's ready to come back. And usually it will be because the child has now grown up, feels more independent, is in school for quite a few hours. A lot of frustration has seeped in whereby she wants to start using herself intellectually again. Companies are now realizing that that's a great talent pool also to get back into the workforce. So in fact, several companies, currently we have 500 companies on the Jobs for Her portal who are specifically targeting women who are looking at getting back into the workforce. And many of these companies have specialized programs for it. For example, Tata is actually one of the pioneers in this in India, and they started with a SKIP program, the Second Career Internship Program. Godrej has the 2.0 career program, Genpact, Unilever has Career by Choice. Goldman Sachs, of course, has trademarked returnship. So the reason why companies are now trying to get back these women into the workforce is because of the big leaking talent pipeline problem, right? So in India, if you look at industry averages, at the entry level, companies still have 30% women. But that becomes 10% of the managerial level and drops to 1% of the CEO level. So the big gap is at the managerial level, and that's when companies are trying to bridge that gap by taking back women who had the prior experience, took a break for some time, and are ready to get back into managerial roles.
Thanks for that, Neha. I think I'd like to share a perspective from Schneider on this aspect. So while you're rightly saying that the policies is something that all organizations are working out, and we have 6 months, extended to 1 year, where you can either work from home or you can have flexi timing. But I think the other element that one needs to remember is, how do you treat women when they're on maternity leave? What is the engagement with the organization? And in Schneider, we've realized that this is the big piece, and this is the big puzzle that we need to sort out. So when women are at the break, are they actually engaged with the organization? Is someone talking to her? Is someone engaging with her? And also what one needs to understand is that some of them are very ambitious ladies, right? So they are really concerned that once they come back from maternity, what is the kind of role they will be offered? And they are not ready to settle for the second best. And why should they be, right? This is a natural process. It happens. They come back, and we need to ensure that we fit them right in the organization as per their experience and as per their caliber. So I thought I'll just add that point, because while we work on all this, this is something which we need to give equal, if not more, emphasis on. I'll move on to Aparna now. Aparna, we know there are great things happening in 3M. We had that conversation, and you highlighted a lot of innovative practices that 3M are doing. But I know you're also doing a lot of work on changing managerial mindset. And the point that I just spoke about also kind of relates to it. You know, what is the engagement of the managers with women who've gone for the maternity break? And how is it that they view this entire agenda of diversity and balance team? So let's hear from you, and you can specifically emphasize on the work that you're doing on that front.
Thanks, Niharika. Before I do that, just a quick comment on the trailing spouse and the example you gave of Wipro. So this kind of takes me back to the 1970s and 80s, where my father was working in the State Trading Corporation and had a transferable job, and my mother was in All India Radio. And she retired as director of All India Radio only because AIR allowed her to move with her spouse. So while we are now talking about it as an innovative thing, I think these things are possibly cyclical, we tend to forget, but you know, it's kind of a very practical, basic thing that you need to do to let, you know, whoever the spouse is move with the husband or wife. So she wouldn't have been able to continue working if that had not been the case. So it just reminded me of those days. Okay, on what are we doing for managers? We have a really active women's leadership forum. And the way we are positioning this is not to promote just gender diversity, but to promote diversity as a whole, right? We realize that gender is a big issue for us. We really definitely need to increase the percentage of women in 3M India. But going beyond that, how do managers especially deal with people who have different needs, different perspectives, different requirements, are at different points in their lives, right? And coming to women specifically, we've said a lot about the kind of policies companies have had, right? So, for example, Adil was talking about Dell and work from home. Now, if there is a supervisor in Dell who doesn't believe in this and, you know, kind of passes on that message to the team that if you're working from home, you're not really working, what is the kind of message you're giving? One is you're passing on a message that Dell doesn't really believe in what they're saying. That's one. And secondly, even if they don't take that message, the percentage of people in that team who will be working from home will be less because they're taking that subliminal message. My boss believes that, you know, I'm not working if I'm working from home. So we have a lot of these policies. We have something we call flexibility, for example, where you can make any choice you want. You know, it could be, I want to take the third Friday off every month to go to my son's school for, you know, the PTA meeting. Or it could be work from home once a week. It could be work from home at a stretch 3 days once a month. It could be anything, depending on your needs. Just work it out with your supervisor and implement it, and that's all the policy there is. Now, for something like this to succeed, we really need to sensitize the managers to believe in these things. So, making them aware of the policy is one, and getting them to promote these things, and very positively reinforcing that these things are done to improve productivity, to make you, a better 3Mer, in a sense, and contribute back to the organization. So that is one piece. The second piece is also I think, in a very visual way, displaying fairness, right? When you're dealing with men and women, being very, very fair, being very clear that you're setting similar performance expectations across teams. We need to guide people not to be oversensitive about women in their teams, really, because they get a bit edgy when they're doing performance reviews, for example. So the typical thing is, and we hear this time and time again, but then she cries. But then, yeah, okay, she'll cry and then she'll get over it, but give her that feedback, deal with it and move on. It's just two people expressing themselves in different ways. So if you have two guys, one of them may take it very stoically, the other one may get angry. Now, for most managers, dealing with anger is easy, but dealing with a woman crying is like really hard. So really helping them, coaching them through those things, right? Because these are very practical things that come in the way of them hiring more women in their teams. Once they get used to this, that becomes easier. And lastly, getting them to mentor and coach women, especially in sales. So we are trying to drive hiring of women in sales, which is, it's a harder job. There are very few women in sales in India per se. So how do you coach and mentor those ladies to make a success of their careers there? So these are the three areas.
Thank you for that, Aparna. A different perspective that you brought into the discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you were there when we were introducing the profile of Monica. So we have amongst all the HR practitioners here, a business lady. And so I think I'm going to pose the next question to her, because I'll be very interested in knowing that, considering we have these challenges, right, when you're hiring women, the 4M is never going to go away. That's part of life. And one needs to deal with that. You could take an approach and say, why should I invest in women, right, if this is what's going to happen? So you being a business leader, how do you see this? How do you handle it? And why would you still seek to have a gender balanced team?
So I think, there is a lot of research that you can find where they talk about what's the business case for gender diversity. And when you read across that material, you will, more often than not find things like increased revenue, much more honesty, trust, and all those factors, your performance going up, the company doing well, revenues going up or sales going up X%. But I think I have a very simple reason. Just the fact that the world is made up of 50% men and 50% women gives you a good enough reason as to why you can't exclude the other gender, whether it's men or women, right? You have to have an inclusive climate, and there's no better reason than to include women and make sure that you get diversity of thoughts, actions, negotiations, influence, leadership styles, conflict management. Imagine if you are sitting on a table and everybody had the same face, and everybody thought alike. The outcome that would come for a particular problem on the table would be just the same. But if you had a diversity of men, women, different styles, thoughts, perspectives, it brings a whole different connotation to the kind of problems that you're solving for the world today. Right? That's a very simple thought that I have, why you need to have gender balanced teams. The second is a very business imperative, which is from an India perspective, and I think from a global perspective, there is a acute shortage of talent all over, acute shortage. I remember going and trying to hire a data scientist, right? When you start looking at those kind of skills, at least from the lab that I lead, which is more a systems development lab, so think of hardware, servers, people who write operating systems, who do circuits on the processors, right? If you manage to get hold of women who actually do that, why not? Why would I want to lose out on talent hiring just because there's a concept of gender around it? I really don't care what gender, background, race, nationality, country, educational background that they come from, as long as I know they have the right skills that come up, they're able to come on board, hire quickly, have diversity of thought, are innovative in thinking, and come and solve the problems of the world. So I think for those two perspectives, I would want to have a gender balanced team.
Great, thank you for that. I think in the last half an hour, we've spoken a lot about policies, supportive policies. We've spoken about the culture that one needs to have in the organization. We spoke a lot on the how IBM is handling medical care, how to leverage technology, which Adil shared. I think let's take a pause right now. We've spoken a lot. I'm going to now direct my question to the audience. Do you think that whatever we've spoken about in the last half an hour, is that enough from an organizational perspective to ensure that we retain our women workforce? And a simple question which could be answered in yes or no from your stand. The voting machines are there, so take half a second and tell us if this is enough or something more needs to be done. A whooping 67% says no. All right. I'm going to change the format of the discussion a little bit. I know we have a Q&A right at the end, but I am actually going to invite two participants to actually share why they feel that this is not enough from this perspective. So anyone who would want to share their thoughts, I'm going to take two audience answering this question right now.
Not enough because...
Could you just be a little louder, please?
Not enough because on one hand there are the diversity policies. On other hand, at the year end when there is normal curve, there is no specific check that women who actually took sabbatical or took maternity leave, whether they were fairly assessed.
Respond to that a little later. Anyone else?
This is the reason why I voted no. And I don't know if organizations are already doing this, but I'm not hearing enough about it. The spotlight, I feel, is a lot on women. We have men also, which are 50% of the workforce. And I think we need to celebrate men as role models. Maybe there are men who like to nurture. Maybe there are men who have a very strong emotional quotient. And as a society, we're looking down upon it. I don't know as organizations if we are also embracing that diversity. Maybe that will change the way we think about gender balance. I don't know if organizations are already focusing on this or not.
Sure. Sure.
I think you bring about an excellent point. Last year, I was invited to be part of an organization's diversity summit, and I was actually shocked to see that the room was full of 500 women, and there were 2 men in the forum, the MD and the worldwide VP HR for that organization. And I think the first comment that I remember going on stage and making it is that you cannot have women progress in this world, in the society, in corporates, if you don't have men in the conversation, right? Because it is not important to create safe haven for women and make them feel great, because when you go to the actual world, the world is made up of 50% men, number one. Number two, when you look at a lot of research around why women sometimes don't make it to the top, in spite of the fact that a lot of companies invest time, resources, money, into coaching them, mentoring them, giving them the right guidance, what you realized was a lot of the same people who did the mentoring did not pick up women because they did not have the right data points from leading a business, right? So they would do a lot of the other stuff, but they could not lead a business. So why wouldn't you give women a rotational role to handle a P&L assignment? Why don't you coach them on what is really needed to head a business, right? So those were 2 data points missing. Third, from my experience, about 15 years in IBM, I can actually tell you I've had many, many male mentors than actually female mentors. And to be honest, I could never, in my mind, I never differentiated whether there was a role model who was a male or a female, because they were just role models and you liked certain aspect of them. So I think it's important that organizations, when they devise these policies, they don't make it very, very women-centric, because somewhere you feel comfortable relating to a particular gender, but if you don't realize the potential of the 50% men that come on the table, it goes waste. Lastly, a big change that we did, we run a program, as I said, it's called a Trailblazer program, where we handpicked 30 women to coach them and said, you're going to be technical leaders and not managers. We have enough managers as women. Women traditionally tend to choose manager as the logical career path, but we want you to be technical. And we actually said, initially the core team that was formed is all women, and I said, no, I need men in this forum. So there are men managers, there are men technical distinguished engineers who coach and mentor the team. And I think it's important to have that perspective. Just wanted to share, you're absolutely right on the point, but something that the organizations need to focus on.
And I'd like to give you another example also, actually, of our work with Citibank. First of all, the head of the diversity program is a man, which is very encouraging to see. Secondly, all the flexible policies that they provide, they offer to both their female and male employees. And in fact, they have